Hi, friends. My name is Yolanda with Harper Therapy, and I wanted to share some thoughts today about the brain and how important the brain is for us. So, I am a self-professed brain geek, and in my training over time, I just have realized the importance of focusing on the brain, of brain health, and bringing brain-based therapies and interventions to help with some of the things that we experience in life. And one of the things that's been more and more in the news over the past several years and that has gained more and more attention has been just the effects of brain injury and concussion. And it's not something that we have thought a lot of in the past, but it's really important to pay attention to because in the past we would just kind of press forward, move on, like get back in, and not recognize the importance of treating a brain injury. So I wanted to talk a little bit about today about the importance of the brain, the importance of taking care of the brain after a brain injury. So that looks like a concussion. A lot of times what the concussions that have been more in the news today have been with sports injuries. There's been a lot of news of former professional football players and some of the effects of that ongoing repetitive injury to their head with tackles. But we see more and more awareness even as kids are younger and going into pee-wee sports or rec sports. There's more protective factors, there's more protective gear. Now high schools are doing a baseline assessment so that if there is a head injury, they can kind of check in to see what things look like post-injury. Now there's more and more importance of recognizing that if a player has a head injury or a concussion or has had his bell rung, that the best thing to do in that course of action, instead of putting them back into play, is to pull them out and to have some rest. But some other areas where we can have some brain injury, some concussion, things that need to be on our radar to pay attention to, because guys, we only have one brain. And the brain is really adaptive, and we'll talk some more about that. But we need to make sure that we set our brains up for success to carry us through the rest of our lives. So in addition to sports injuries, what we want to pay attention to are things like car accidents. A lot of times we've had those situations in childhood. My husband shares a story when he and his brothers were kids. They were playing with arrows, and one of the kids got an arrow to the head. Another friend had a baseball bat to the head. And those are situations where there wasn't follow-up medical care because, especially at the time, we didn't know the importance of assessing and making sure that there wasn't a brain injury, a concussion. So those are blunt force traumas. We also need to be aware of like blast wave traumas. We see that with our combat veteran population. They're coming back from experiencing those blasts. And that isn't so much of a knock to the head as it is a shearing and a tearing and the head moving forward and back and the brain kind of rattling in the skull. That's similar to what whiplash is. So we want to be aware of shearing and tearing in addition to those blunt force traumas. What that can look like as far as symptoms that come up: headache, nausea, dizziness, irritability, sensitivity to light and sound. It's very visual-spatial, right? So difficulty with balancing, difficulty with figuring out where my body is in time and space. Those are some of the effects that we can experience, some of the symptoms that we can experience when we've had some trauma to the head, a concussion, a brain injury, mild traumatic brain injury. So what do we do with that? Well, we want to seek medical attention. Like, gone are the days that we just kind of brushed the dirt off and moved on. So medical attention is super important. We want to get an idea of the extent of the injury. The doctor might prescribe some medication to help with some of the symptoms of nausea, dizziness, that type of thing. But really a primary component is rest, right? we have to rest. We have to rest our brain. We have to rest our bodies. So it's really wise for us not to dismiss, because a lot of times we're like, oh, I don't need to rest. I want to get back in the game, right? I see that with kids all the time on the sports fields, and even to the extent where I have kind of had to hold myself back on my seat in the stands to say, whoa, that kid doesn't need to be back in the game. So rest is super important. And another thing that we want to keep in mind are things that help the brain facilitate its healing. So we've all heard of the word neuroplasticity. That is the brain's ability to heal itself, to create new neural pathways around an injury. And neurofeedback can help with that process. Neurofeedback acts like a roadmap for healing brain injury. So think about your GPS system or your favorite navigation system or navigation app. So if you are driving in your car, you've got Waze on, then sometimes Waze will say, hey, we're rerouting. Hey, here's a shortcut. How about you consider taking the shortcut? So that's what neurofeedback does for the brain. The neurofeedback says to the brain, hey, why don't you consider, brain, creating some new neural pathways around this injured part towards this way? Why don't you consider this path? So that is done in a calm, relaxed state. So even though your brain is active and exercising, it's done in a relaxed state that leads to healing. In about 15 sessions, we are able to greatly reduce or eliminate those symptoms that you experience post head injury. So that is a way of really honoring and protecting our brain, and like shout out to the brain and all it does. So hope this was helpful information for you. If you have experienced a brain injury in your life, recent or in the past, or you know someone who has, and some of these symptoms sound familiar, reach out, give us a call, to find out if neurofeedback would be a good fit for you as far as helping to treat some of those symptoms. And we will catch you on the flip side. Have a great day.